Thank you, Jacqueline. Good evening. It is Wednesday, October 4th. It's a regular meeting of the Programs and Services Committee. We are being audio.
Hello, everyone.
How did that happen?
I don't know, but it's always nice to hear. I love hearing our counselors' voices, and I'm glad everyone can make it. Give me a second while I open up the agenda and glance around the Zoom room to make sure everyone that needs to be here is here, because I'd like to open things up with a full contingent. So
the only person I do not see is Councillor Oliver.
And is
I heard from him. We're going to ping him. I think he's doing double duty somehow. So
fair enough. And then the other question is for the first item. Do we have Ms. Kerwin Derwick?
Yes, she's here.
Okay, and then
I'm here.
Super. And then Ms. Delaney, are we able to promote from the participants list the participants who will need to speak on the second item? I see one of them is here.
Oh, okay. Who's that, please?
Jeremy Friedberg is here. I don't know, is there any other?
He's here. He's in this meeting.
Is there?
Yes.
I saw that. Yeah. Is there anybody else on that participants list that Mr. Friedberg needs us to promote?
So, Andrea, it'll just be me, no one else.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Friedberg. So we've got 55 participants as we start this meeting. 38
Recording
of
in
whom
progress.
are not panelists. So the rest of us you see on your screen. We are also being recorded by New TV. Welcome, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. At the start of the meeting, I am joined by Councillor Markowitz from Ward 4, who is Vice Chair, Councillor Lucas, who is from at large from Ward 2. Ms. Delaney, Councillor Kelly is trying to get into the meeting.
Okay.
Councillor Maliki, the Ward Councillor from Ward 3. Councillor Bowman, at large from Ward 6. Councillor Grossman, who is at large from Ward 7. I am at large from Ward 5, your chair, Andrea Downs. And so I'm missing Councillor Lipoff at the moment. Yes?
I am here.
No, he's here.
You are here. Sorry.
Just Councillor Oliver's not here.
Just Councillor Oliver missing. Thank you very much. And Councillor Lipoff, you're hard to see. Sorry. And then I have also here Councillor Kelly and President Albright, not members of the committee, but of course, welcome. We have here Commissioner McGonigal from DPW, Captain Doucette from Newton Police, Ms. Kerwin Derrick from the Mayor's Office and Human Rights Committee, Mr. Temple from the Law Department, our clerk, Ms. Delaney, another clerk, Ms. Flynn, and also another clerk, Mr. Matthews. Did I get that right? Oh, and we also have Sergeant Wade from the Newton Police Department on, among our participants. Welcome. So our first item, and if by any chance your connection gets wonky and you're listening and you're one of the now 53 people who are in attendance and not in a panelist format, so we can't, not everybody can see you. If you want to watch on New TV, that is also an option. It's also being live broadcast. So our first item for discussion is 14823, discussion regarding the security measures and any incidents during the 2023 Boston Marathon. This is something we heard on June 21st and had a pretty full discussion about, but we decided to leave it to the Human Rights Commission, the mayor, and the chief of police to work with the running clubs and come back with a report on what next steps might be. So, Ms. Kerwin-Derrick, can you give us a brief update on how this matter stands?
Yep. And I want to apologize first off. Doing double duty as a parent, so I had to find the closest coffee shop. So I apologize for the background noise. And I thought Chief Carmichael was going to be here this evening, but I don't see him. So I will give an update on as it relates to Human Rights Commission and the mayor's office. Since we last met, we did meet with the running groups and the BAA at the BAA offices. It was a very productive conversation, I think, one of many that will happen before next April. On the table was a question of, for lack of a better term, a fun run, as well as some other projects. It was clear from the group that a fun run will not happen. They felt as though it was performative and not something that they would like to participate in, and we're respecting that request. One request that they did have was that the mayor would join them next year up on Heartbreak Hill, which we obviously agreed to wholeheartedly. Again, as I mentioned, it was the first of many conversations. Much of what needs to be discussed is between the running clubs and the BAA. So we will be included when it pertains to Newton. But, you know, the marathon goes across all communities, and they need to ensure that the same security measures happen in all the communities that they go through. So that's what they're working on right now.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Kerwin-Derrick, thank you for the update. I think you said that this would be one of many meetings before next Patriots Day. Just wondering, do you know when you are scheduled to meet next?
No, we're waiting to be invited. We were invited to this meeting by the BA and the running groups because, again, as I mentioned, there's a lot that needs to be worked out. So they know that when they're ready to have us be part of that, we will be.
Okay. And who from the city was at this meeting?
It was myself, the mayor, Chief Carmichael, as well as Superintendent McMains.
Okay, good. And you said, sorry, excuse me. You said both running groups were there, approximately?
There were actually three running groups.
Oh.
Yep. So there were 4 people from the running groups, the BAA, their operations person, as well as their community engagement person. And so I believe they've had continued conversations, and we will take our cue both from the running groups as well as the BAA.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Please continue the dialogue, and I look forward to hearing more about these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bowman.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I do want to just thank the Mayor's Office and the Newton Police Department, and most especially the BAA, for taking this issue seriously and looking not just at Newton but at all of step. And I guess I look forward to hearing, the further outcome. But I do appreciate that, and please send my best. Thanks.
Thank you, and I know the police appreciate that support as well.
Seeing no further questions, I will join my colleagues in thanking you, Mr. Kerwin-Derrick, and the Police Department and the Human Rights Commission for taking this seriously and taking this on. Colleagues, we are nearing the end of term. By this time of this year in this term, we need to start putting things that are on our agenda off our agenda. So one of the reasons I put this on was to get a report. The other reason was to entertain a motion of no action necessary. If we need to, we can refile in the new term. I'm hoping we don't, and that we can just have a conversation with the mayor's office or the Human Rights Commission just prior to next year's marathon if necessary. Do I have a motion?
Motion to NAN.
Thank you. Motion to NAN from Councillor Lucas. All in favor? Actually, I've been asked to do roll call votes for everything. So, Ms. Delaney, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Maliki,
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz,
Aye.
Counselor Bowman,
Aye.
Counselor Grossman,
Aye.
and Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Okay, that's 7-0.
Okay,
NAN.
thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kerwin-Dorick. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So the second item is 31923, petition request to repeal the overnight winter parking ban. I would like to channel my inner Councillor Baker and first talk a little bit about process. And to do that, I think we're best served by calling on our legal counsel, Mr. Temple, if you're available, to brief us on council's options with regard to this item at this time and what our deadlines look like. Mr. Temple? All right. Can someone, Cassidy? I think he may also be in programs and services, which may be part of the issue. All right. So let's start then. So I will start by giving the petitioner, the lead petitioner in this, Jeremy Freudberg, up to 5 minutes to present his case. And then I think we will go back to the process, which will be, what our options are as a council and as a committee. And then so that we're clear on what we need to do and by when, and then go into questions from the committee, and finally go to a vote on our issues. Oh, Mr. Temple, you have joined us.
I'm sorry, Chair. I am jumping around this evening.
I figured you were possibly on a different meeting that I heard earlier. But I'm wondering if you can just set the table for us and explain what our options are legally under the charter.
Sure. So the City Council has to act within 30 days of the signatures having been certified. I don't have that specific date in front of me, but we're still at the very beginning of that 30 days. Cassidy may be able to fill us in on that, on when the 30 days expires. But what your options are tonight are to approve the initiative that's being proposed, approve the measure. It is to reject it, or it is to approve something else in lieu of it, which would be some other amendment or change to the parking ban that is not repealing it entirely. Now, if you do that option 3, which is a third way, then that will be deemed a denial under our charter, and it will allow the initiative petitioners to seek 5% additional signatures within 40 days. And if they do that, then it will automatically go on the next ballot, for next regular election ballot, which will be 2025.
Thank you. That was extremely clear. Can you give us some numbers on what what is the final number that 5% represents?
So they initially needed to get 10% signatures of 10% of all registered voters, which I believe was around 5,000 approximately. And then they will need to get an additional 5% on top of that 10%. So it should be about an additional 2,500.
Thank you. So 5,000 or 2,500, 5,000 to be before us, 2,500 plus or minus more in the next 40 days or in 30 days. This goes into effect if we take either no action or vote to approve. Is that correct?
One change to that. If you take no action, that's deemed a denial. So it will not go into effect. If no action is taken within 30 days, then that will start the trigger for the supplemental signatures to be collected.
I see. Thank you. That's very helpful. Anything else we need to know?
I don't think so at this time.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, and I had a sheet here on this. Here we go. Mr. Freudberg, please unmute.
Yep, I'm here. I do want to say just at the outset that since we are in the webinar format, that Jeannie Fairley, who is city staff, is currently just an attendee and might want to be a panelist. So if the clerk could arrange that.
Thank you for calling that out.
That would be fantastic.
Ms. Delaney, can you do that? And we'll start the timer after. I don't see her there, Mr. Freudberg, but I'm sure that our capable staff can find her if she is.
She is there, but again, I won't take up any more time with that.
Thank you.
And I assume that the hands that are up are for after my presentation.
I assume so.
Okay, great. Well, again, it's very good to be here again back at PSNT. I was here a couple months ago, you might recall. Again, just for the record, my name is Jeremy Freudberg, and I've lived my entire life at 102 Clark Street here in Newton. And, this summer, as you all know, I took the initiative, no pun intended, to, bring forward this initiative petition and hopefully a ballot question to repeal the overnight parking ban, which I'm sure as councilors you've received many emails and other contact over the years about how many people perceive this to be very inequitable, difficult, contrary to certain values, and other things which we can discuss as we proceed on. So again, just as you were saying, Chair Downs, we did collect sufficient signatures for the initiative petition. That was 10% of registered voters. And we turned in over 6,000 and about 5,500 were verified. And we do intend to hit the next target. So obviously that's a lot of signatures, and many of those were collected by myself. And I did have many conversations out in the field with people some of whom were skeptical. And, I did learn a lot from that whole experience. And really what I learned is that for a lot of people, it really is that simple that, we have this winter parking ban, which doesn't have a whole lot to do with winter. And we know it's wrong. And essentially, unjust laws shouldn't stand. And, if we were trying to solve the supposed problems that the current parking ban does solve beyond winter, this is not the tool that we would use. So that was definitely one of the key takeaways that I heard in the field. And of course, what I've also heard, which, as you probably know all as well, is that for a lot of people, this is a major burden. I mean, they either want to stay in Newton, they've been here a long time, or whatever it is. And this parking ban does create, I hate to use the word hardship, but it does create a certain barrier. So I definitely think that going out in the field was a valuable experience. I'm glad that we're at this point now where we have that data and that real significant representation of how a good subset of Newton voters feel. Of course, as you all know, not every Newton resident follows municipal issues, so I do feel that was a pretty good showing. So again, I don't want to go through every single argument because I'm sure you've heard them all before, but I do want to just kind of address a couple things. And how am I doing on time, by the way? Because I don't see the timer.
I assumed someone in the clerk's office was taking
Okay.
that. I'm sorry, I haven't.
Yeah,
been keeping
that's all
track.
right. That's all right. So again, I think just on the topic of time, actually, that's kind of one of the big reasons to kind of consider repealing the parking ban is that people do sort of pay for this policy with their time, whether that's going to the municipal lot or shuffling their cars around or moving out of Newton and living somewhere that's less convenient. I mean, we all know that Newton is the most convenient place in the world. I mean, that's why I choose to stay here. And I think time is a very precious commodity. And, I think if there's some way that we can give people back their time, we should consider it. Of course, safety comes first. And I think that the case on safety has been proven. So again, I think being mindful of what time really means to people is definitely paramount. And again, this also relates to another point which I have heard, and I'm not sure I don't agree with, but I'm sure you've all heard, which is that the parking ban actually decreases the cost of housing. And I'd say maybe that's true, but I don't think it's right to sort of subsidize other people's rent with other people's time. I think we should all be on an equal playing field, and like I said, have the time that our limited time to do what we want for what's important, for our families and to work to provide for our families and to see our friends and all of that. I mean, and again, on that point, again, most people who I talked to in Newton doing this petition, I'd say most of them, they had driveways, they had sufficient parking. And, for them, it wasn't even so much about, the hardship of lack of parking, but just that the parking ban was a barrier for them to get together with their friends and family who come to visit them. Those people might be coming from another city, which isn't as, bike and pedestrian friendly. They already own a car. They want to drive to Newton to come visit their family. They need to have a place to park. So just as far as what's a realistic option, again, to just be reasonable. I mean, it's really just, we want to let people come together and not be, stifled by unnecessary policies. And so I lost my train of thought for a second. I also recognize that, some people might see this as a leap of faith. That's not necessarily a bad thing. In Attleboro, just last month, they managed to get together and say, let's repeal. There's this identical ordinance to ours, and they managed to say, let's try it. And they were all comfortable with that. Again, I can understand that there might be certain issues in certain places. I mean, I just spent the past 3 years serving on the traffic council. I've seen many a time where we can craft a particular solution to a certain neighborhood. I expect that to, continue in the future. And certainly some of those particular crafted solutions were based on, neighborhood desires or aesthetics. Others were based on safety, and we were able to accommodate all of that. So again, I think that again, you've heard this all before, but I just don't see how a citywide policy is really the right tool for anything.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And I will leave you on to answer questions.
Yep.
Should you be should any be addressed to you? That's typical in committee work. I'm going to open this up for clarifying questions from the committee. You may have questions for staff who are here in their official capacity, and then we can go into our own feelings and how we might want to vote, because we really do have two options, or we have a possible third option, which we can discuss after we kind of straw poll whether we want to take option 1 or 2. So from the committee for clarifying questions, I have Councillor Bowman followed by Councillor Lucas at the moment.
I don't have a clarifying question. I just wanted to state my opinion, so you can come back to me.
Okay. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. I had a question for Attorney Temple regarding the signatures. Is he there? Oh, you're there. Attorney Temple, you said that they need another 5% of registered voters' signatures in order to potentially get this to the next election. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, with that additional 5%, can the petitioner, Jeremy Freudberg, can he submit the same 5%, or is it a different 5%?
It is a different, so it's for a total of 15%. Individuals who signed the initial petition cannot sign the supplemental petition.
Oh, okay. And you said 15%? I thought it was 5.
Well, I'm saying total with the 10 that were originally collected.
They collected 10. Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so the additional 5, but it can't be of the prior 10% that's already been submitted.
Correct. So in
Got it.
total,
Okay.
you're collecting signatures of 15% of registered voters.
Got it. Okay, I just had a question on that. That was my policy or clarifying question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I have Councillor Grossman. And
Thanks.
unless Councillor Bowman, you want to put your hand, you're again ahead of everybody. So, put your hand up when you have a question.
Quick legal question as well, which is just following on Councillor Lucas's question. Attorney Temple, I thought I heard you say there was a deadline for collecting the additional 5%, but I wasn't certain. Is there a deadline?
Yes, it's 45 days from the date that the city council takes action.
Okay, thank you.
Also wanted to note, I believe the initiative petition is not advisory, it is binding. Is that correct?
That is
Yes.
correct. It will be a binding ballot question. If the voters vote to repeal it, it is repealed.
Another clarifying question, Councillor Bum? Okay, and if not, I have a few I wanted to run by our staff.
Chair, can I ask one late one on that since we were
go
just
ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't get my hand up. And what we're voting tonight, if we approve the measure or reject the measure, that has Attorney Temple has the same effect. If we approve the measure, then the overnight parking ban is gone, right?
It will go to the mayor for signature
Yeah.
or potential veto as any other measure.
Okay, right. Thank you.
However, that's a yes that starts now. Whereas if we give it a no, then there's 2 years before the initiative petition. But the initiative petition is binding if it's successful. And I see some more hands here. Sorry, Councilor Grossman.
Thank you. Question for Attorney Temple. In either the event that this council agreed with this petition and repealed the ordinance, and or in the event that it was successful as a ballot measure and the ordinance was repealed, for what period of time is it repealed? And I guess what I'm trying to understand is, like, no law is permanent in time. And how also would other sorts of related laws be interpreted in light of that? The example that is popping to my mind is if instead we instituted a citywide permit program, for example, how would passage of something like that is related to the topic be interpreted in either event?
So to answer the first part of the question, it would go into effect 20 days after it's passed by the city council. In terms of its impact on other ordinances and regulations of the city, we'd really have to look at them one by one. I would certainly recommend that all other ordinances that work in conjunction with this one be amended to be consistent with it. I'm not sure if there are any that do need to be amended. We certainly would also just read and interpret and apply those ordinances to be consistent with the parking ban no longer existing.
And if it were repealed by virtue of a ballot process,
Yep.
is that an indefinite repeal, or what happens as time goes on with either the same policy or other policies that are related that have the same target goal?
Yeah, so it is an immediate repeal after the election. And we did look at the question of, is there a certain 2-year waiting period or any period of time before the city council could reenact the same ordinance all over again? If that's the question, as I understand it, and there is no prohibition on that. In theory, the city council could turn around right after the election and recodify it. I mean, I think there's other kind of political controls there that likely would stop that, but there's nothing legally prohibiting you from doing that.
Or from at that point, creating some other type of ordinance that maybe is not the same, but.
Exactly. Yep. You would have the freedom
okay.
to do that.
Okay.
A similar question for you, Mr. Temple. If before the ordinance, the initiative petition is voted on, we pass ordinances that put in, say, a geographically constrained overnight parking ban of perhaps different duration, because we realize there's a public safety interest in doing so, given whatever we're hearing both pro and con, and I should give that out in a minute. Would that also be repealed by the initiative petition?
Yeah, so this is a tricky question, and basically how this would come about is if the city council acts to deny the petition, Jeremy and the petitioners submit their additional signatures, that locks in it going on the ballot in 2025. But 6 months from now or a year from now, in the interim, you change the ordinance in some way. I would certainly recommend acting now on it or not touching it during that waiting period, because it creates somewhat of an unknown. I think that the best reading of our charter is that if you amend it to some other thing in the intervening 2 years while we wait for the election, whatever you amend it to, that's what's going to go on the ballot to be repealed.
Excellent. That's very good to know. Thank you. So wanted to do just a population check here. We now have 66 people watching us on Zoom. We have been joined by Ms. Fairley, who is our ADA coordinator. We have also been joined by Councillor Oliver, a member of the committee. Welcome. And did I miss anybody, Ms. Delaney? And we've been joined also by our by Chief Bianchi and Councillor Kelly. And was Chief Gentile here, or is it just Chief Bianchi? You're welcome.
Please go ahead. Yeah, I just
do
follow up on what Mr. Phillips said. And I'm wondering.
Okay. Somebody's on 2 meetings and needs to mute one of us. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Delaney. I think that's us. All right. So the vote is approve, reject, or make a substitute motion. And I'm going to entertain councilors' thoughts or other questions for staff. Oh, I had one that hasn't been asked. Snow emergencies. Are we, in the case that we approve lifting the ban, are we still going to be able to require people to move their cars off the street in the case of a snow emergency? How do we interpret that?
Is that a question for me, Chair?
I think it's for you, if not the police officers. So,
or I don't know, Commissioner McGonigal too may have thoughts on that. I don't believe
Right.
it will impact the ability during snow emergencies.
Thank you.
But I'd welcome any other thoughts on it.
Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Public Works would definitely request the ability, not only snow, but any weather related or any emergency as far as utility breaks, things of that nature. We rarely use these. It's a handful of times throughout the year. During snow, we're expecting a back-to-back snowstorms, but on a regular average storm, we normally don't even have a parking ban, but we would request to be able to work with the police as we do now to ensure that we can have a parking ban when we do need it.
Thank you. And I think I saw Captain Doucette.
Yes, thank you, Counselor. So right now, with the parking ban in effect, the possible amount of vehicles we need to tow is severely limited. So if we lift this ban, now we're requiring everyone to get off the streets when we do, in fact, initiate a ban. So I foresee an extreme hardship on the police department to tow that many more vehicles. So I think it makes the DPW's job significantly harder to clear the snow with, I can't put an exact number of how many vehicles we would see an increase on, but we're going to see a significant increase in tows.
Okay. And perhaps new contracts to do so. Captain Doucette, while I have you, one other question I had was about, I know Councilor Grossman alluded to this, a permit program. If we were to do a permit program where some people could and some people couldn't park on a street or multiple streets, is that something that you have the capacity at the NPD to enforce, particularly at night?
It would probably be similar to the permitted parking we enforce now. It just will require the officers to check on certain streets to see if any given vehicle has in fact been issued a permit.
Not certain streets, every street.
Yeah, Councillor Oliver, if you'd like to, you can raise your hand. I understand that we have in the past talked about having a pilot of lifting the overnight parking ban in neighborhoods that are severely parking constrained and issuing permits to people who had no driveway access. And, you know, with, again, the understanding that they would have to move in a weather emergency, and have heard from the department that in the snow, in the winter, at night, patrol officers would be, shall I say, reluctant to get out of their cars to enforce and scrape off windshields and check permits or even check license plate permit linkages. If that's not true, I would welcome that, because that might be a way to allow some parking where in a different scenario we might not be able to allow parking.
I mean, that's probably going to create a pretty big hardship on the police department in regards to having every officer in their division get out of their car and check 50, 60 cars to see if they've been issued a permit when there's a half a foot of snow.
Got it. And there are license plate reading programs, but we would have to institute new technology for that. Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. I have a few more hands up, and I meant to Ms. Delaney, I believe you sent an email on how many emails this committee and the city council had received as of 5 o'clock today, and I counted a few more since. I believe it was 32 plus 10 since 5 o'clock this afternoon in favor of repealing the overnight parking ban, and 29 plus 1, which would be 30, in favor of maintaining the parking ban, 4 that advocated for an interim trial, and 4 that had some other issue they raised. Mr. Freudberg, do you want to say something before I go to bring us back in, council?
Yeah, no, if it's okay with you, I did want to kind of give my own take on the snow emergencies question, if that's all right.
I'll give you a minute. Go ahead.
Sure. So again, when I drafted this petition to begin with, I was very careful to not touch other ordinances that related to snow. And we do have other ordinances, of course, that relate to snow. And there's actually in Chapter 19, I think it's 19-225, I can check that later, or 19-166 as well. There is the city can either ticket or tow, either way, for impeding snow or ice removal. And I think impeding snow or ice removal does have a pretty broad definition. So And I think actually when you do get a ticket during a snow emergency, that's actually the ordinance that you are cited under anyway, regardless of whether your car is towed. So that would still be on the table, and I expect that it would something that could be used during a snowstorm. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, let's, I'm looking for your input. Councillor Bowman, followed by Councillor Malachy.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I was anxiously raising my hand before. I don't feel great, so I wanted to get my comments in. I'm not sure I'm going to make the whole meeting. So I first wanted to thank Mr. Farberg and I believe Mr. Cody and others who brought this before us, and of course the hundreds of people we've heard from in the last couple of years expressing their thoughts on the parking ban, either supporting removing it or a permit program or keeping it in place. I understand there's a lot of feelings on all sides on this. I just in case I'm not here when we get to the end, as I stated 2 years ago, I understand the hardships. I understand the difficulty and the hoops that, yep.
You may want to turn off your video.
Oh, here, hold on. Sorry.
There you go.
My internet's a little spotty tonight. Better. Okay. So I understand. So thank you to everybody who worked on this, and thank you to everybody who's written us. And I understand there are a lot of feelings on this, and there are a lot of reasons why, and appropriate reasons why we need to accommodate some more people parking somewhere in our city. And, I am compelled to say I would support a trial, assuming we're prepared to collect data and do observations, especially during snow emergencies, as to what happens and how well we're able to respond to that. I guess I'll leave it up to you guys to decide how long is an appropriate amount of time, but, I would be supportive of that. I mean, I would prefer an option where we were having permitting, but I appreciate how difficult that is to roll out, and how much more difficult that is than appealing. Than just repealing this and doing a trial. So in case I don't make it till the end of the meeting, just know that I would be supportive of a trial. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Feel better. I have Councillor Malachy next.
Yes, a question for Attorney Temple. If either the temporary thing passed or the petition itself in 2 years, how would that affect situations where we have a certain number of streets now with only one side street parking allowed because of the width of the street or concerns about emergency and other vehicle access? If the opening up of on-street parking year-round resulted in more cars living in Newton, as it were, whether it's people moving in with more cars than they have off-street parking, or people who are here now getting that extra car, would the city still be entitled to turn more streets into either no parking streets or one-side parking streets where they are now two-side parking streets? Attorney Temple referred to not making changes during a trial, or during the I think he was referring to during the interim period, if the petitioners got their signatures for 2025.
I believe that's true. I do think that changes that do not explicitly deal with this section might be possible, but I'm waiting for Attorney Temple to come and return to our meeting. In the meantime, President, hold the thought, Councillor Malachy.
Okay.
I'll hear from President Albright, and if we get Mr. Temple back, we'll pose that question directly to him. President
Thank
Albright.
you, Madam Chair. I'm in 2 meetings at the same time as well. If my question is stupid, you'll just forgive me. I think that the idea of a trial is a good one to really collect data and see how things go. But I'm wondering what would happen if we find a particular area of the city where things are really going awry. Will we have the ability to make changes on the spot, so to speak, within the next, few weeks, few months, whatever it is? Even though it's just a trial, would we have the ability to fix something if we think that it's really not working well?
Mr. Temple, welcome back. There were two questions. They're related. Can we collect data during this trial if we were to do a trial for 2 years with a sunset, for instance, and something really blew up in one neighborhood or another? Could we make interim changes to the overnight parking ban? Well, actually, not to that, but to change things on the streets while we're in the interim period before the and I think Councillor Malachy was aiming at this question as well, while we're awaiting the initiative petition.
Sure, you can continue to enact parking regulations. You would just have to go through the normal process through Traffic Council.
Right. That was my hope.
That makes me feel more comfortable. So thank you for taking this up.
Councillor Malachy, does that address your question as well?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a question from several questions asking for past data, which I'm going to leave out of the discussion because pandemics are special events, which we hope we don't repeat, but certain things happen that don't normally happen. However, whether there were any plowing issues during the pandemic period when we had snow and people were allowed to park on the street, did we have plowing issues, Commissioner?
Madam Chair, no. I mean, during the pandemic, if we all recall, traffic volume was very, very, very low. I don't think it would be a good indicator of if there's a problem or not during the pandemic. I mean, I was here for every snowstorm. Did we have issues? No, but we had no school. Most people were out of work. Traffic volumes were extremely low. So I don't think that's a good indicator. While it did happen and it was successful, it's not the reality we're facing today.
Thank you. I appreciate that that thought as well. And I think it helps us all to just sort of keep in mind special times and not so special times. I have Vice Chair Markowitz, followed by Councillor Grossman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to hold off speaking to the whole item for a second because I want to talk about this trial item. Because I guess we are going to eventually vote on the main item, but I know that you had considered proposing a possible trial as well, and I thought about that, and I think the issue I see with a trial is that I think it's very hard in general when you give something to then take something away, and certainly some people are going to perceive that they are, maybe not getting something as a gift, but they're being given an opportunity now, a privilege, a right, whatever the correct term is for it. And that concerns me because I don't think you can put it back in the bottle if you find out there is a problem or it doesn't work, being able to correct that. And the practical reason, so legally we may be able to do it, and it sounds like we could, but practically, depending on how long the time of the trial was, say it was, more than a season, say it was 2 seasons. And during that time, we're going to have construction and, the zoning proposals now are, we're trying to be car light, car free. We're going to allow potentially by right development without parking. So you'll have people buying condos, moving here, who will bring cars, knowing that they don't have any restriction, for a couple of months of the year that would preclude them from having full-time car ownership. And you're going to probably have some people who will buy cars on, because they know that now they don't have to worry about finding a parking space, and people who will move here just, as just normal turnover of residences. So I think it would be very difficult with any period of time, really, even if it was just 1 season, where you said, okay, we told you this could go away, but now we're taking it away. I think the political hit on that would be so big that I just think we would go sideways on it or not be able to do it. So I'm just not sure it's practical. It's an interesting idea, but I can't see it. If we came to the end of it and said, geez, we really don't think this is a good idea, I just don't think we could put the genie back on the bottle on that one. Now I have other general comments, but I will maybe hold that back until we speak to this item, and then we can come back to the main item, and I can give my thoughts on just the concept of repealing the ban altogether. Is that okay?
You certainly can. I think I would have first proposed to the committee that we consider the question of approving the initiative petition.
Right,
and then if that answer is no, then we have a bifurcated way of saying no. We can say no, forget it, never go home, and it's clean. Or we say no, maybe we try this for 2 years, knowing you're going to have a vote on it at the end of 2 years. And we'd like to collect data and be able to show rather than tell where there might be some problems, and even begin to address them when they do impact public safety. So if I think you tell me, but I think that might be the cleanest process we have, because then we've gotten to the yes or no issue early.
So let me speak to the main item then.
Go ahead.
I have a few points here. So I just want to start off, clearly we've all heard this in different committee meetings and land use and just all over the place. Many of our initiatives that are green related, mobility related, zoning related, often raise the prospect of reducing cars and car dependence and car utilization and so forth. I think virtually everyone who I've talked to who supports those initiatives, bring those initiatives forward, has always said, if you increase parking, you will have more cars, which seems to be contrary to the whole thing. So, that's like my first real concern about this. I mean, if we're going to go in that direction, which has definitely has its pluses, I don't see that we can do this because we're sort of counteracting it. And, I know many members of this committee have said, if you create parking, you're going to have cars. We've all said that. So that becomes an issue. My main issue, though, has always been with this, that I think if you did do something like this, you couldn't just do it you couldn't just do it. You would have to preset our parking regulations to consider all the safety issues that could arise if you allowed people to leave cars on the street basically for as long as they wanted to. Now, I know I'm going to segue a little bit and come back. I know we have a 72-hour limit on, you're supposed to move your car every 72 hours. I have firsthand experience this week where we had a car parked near my house, and my constituent called me, and the car had been there for over a week. And we did speak with the police, and they went out and looked at it. And at the end of the day, a couple of things came out. One was it's difficult to do these types of tag and then follow up, given the resources we have. And two, ultimately, the car's still there. So it's 2 weeks now and sitting there. So I think any kind of enforcement around this, if we did apply new rules, would probably not be all that viable. I believe we've learned on this committee that we have, I think, 11 patrol cars out during the day. And I know Captain Doucette's on and Sergeant Wade, so they can probably speak to that too. I think we have like 11 patrol cars out in the day and 7 or 8 at night, which doesn't sound like a whole lot for a city our size anyway. But to think that they're going to be then trying to, unless we had like parking control officers who we'd have to augment to do this, I think policing this type of thing, no pun intended, would just be onerous on them, and it's not what they're supposed to do anyway. They're peace officers, they're first responders, and it wouldn't be something that would get a lot of shift there. So I think if you implemented something like this, you would have to have a lot of exceptions. I live near Webster Street, West Newton Square. You can't get 3 cars. If a car is parked, most people will not be able to pass each other. So, if you're good, you can do it. But a lot of people just stop and they hesitate. If that car now is sitting there all the time, which I think it could, you would then have the issue of safety and throughput and everything else going on there. So I don't think you could just implement anything like this in a blanket way. You'd have to have a lot of exceptions, and I think that would be difficult. I think those are probably my top comments. There would be enforcement. And if we voted for this today, I don't know when it would go into effect, but if it went into effect for this season, we don't have time to really do anything. I also remember another thing from traffic council, from other committee meetings we had in this committee. I believe we have like 100 different permutations of parking rules in the city. And if I could see Captain Doucette's or Sergeant Wade's face, they're probably laughing right now, because they know that when a patrol officer goes out there, sometimes they're looking at the signs and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So I think enforcement, interpretation, rules, all that stuff is really challenging. So this is more complex than just simply repealing the ban. So let me just say at this point, I'll probably talk again, but maybe not. I probably do not support the repeal as it stands right now. I'm probably a no against a no on the repeal, and I'll just leave it at that for at least for now.
Thank you. We've been joined by Chief Gentile, welcome, and by sorry, I just saw you. Not just Councillor Oliver, but
Councillor Baker.
Councillor Baker. Sorry, I saw his picture and then it went away. Thank you. And these are Councillor Baker is not on the committee, but is of course welcome. Just on background, we have 68 people in attendance beyond those you can see. In hands, I have Councillor Grossman, followed by Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I have a quick legal question. I don't know if Mr. Temple is available. I just wanted to ask, with respect to the trial, do we have the authority to consider and or enact that, or would that need to go through Traffic Council first?
So I can answer that for you. We have draft language to do a trial with a sunset in 2 years. We could make it a sunset of 1 year. I think to do a trial, you would want to have more than 1 year of data, but I think we'll first vote on whether to approve the initiative to petition, and then we can talk about the two other options.
Okay, so I guess I'll start then on the main item and maybe give a quick comment on the trial. I feel similarly to Councilor Markowitz. I first want to say, I know that we've heard from a lot of folks, and I'm assuming that a lot who have joined us tonight who have given us feedback and told us stories of situations that are difficult for them and for their families. And I understand that, and want folks to know that I've heard that and I think about it. I see our responsibility as enacting the policy for the city that makes the most sense. And when I read those different scenarios and I feel for those folks, the permit type of a solution, I don't know exactly what it would look like, what technology would be involved, whether we could consider creative ideas like not having the police enforce it or something like that, seems to me to make more sense. And I understand we don't have that kind of a proposal or a solution before us tonight, but I just want to say that for as many years as I've been on the council and we've been talking about this issue, that continues to be where my mind goes, as something that is logical, makes sense, and could help us achieve our citywide policy goals, but also help out those truly in need for some relief. On the simple question of repealing this particular ordinance, I have a fundamental issue with what I see as opposing policy initiatives and goals that we are pursuing as a city, and specifically our zoning reform process and our climate action initiatives are what are first and foremost on my mind. If we're going to pursue a zoning reform process where we're going to do away with parking minimums, and where from a land use perspective, we have been frequently asked in the last few terms, at least since I've been serving, to approve very significant developments with very modest amounts of parking. in many cases, one or fewer, spaces per unit, I see it as in the complete opposite direction and goal of what we're being asked to consider in potentially repealing this ordinance. And I'm not okay with, in one forum, saying, no, we're gonna build these kinds of units, we're gonna offer this type of housing, and the people who are going to be attracted to come and live here, rent here, buy here, they're going to be folks who want to live car light, who either need one car or no car. But that's not what we see happening. And we've seen example after example where folks do choose to rent or buy in those circumstances, and then want to see fundamental change about our parking policy to allow us to park more cars on our streets and in our neighborhoods. The climate piece of this is even more compelling to me. We are constantly talking about how to reduce our dependency on cars, the number of cars we drive, how we get around, and looking to fundamentally change it. And I just see this as a complete and total 180 to that policy. It doesn't compute for me. On the trial piece, I agree with Councilor Markowitz that doing something for a few years and then potentially telling people, sorry, we allowed you to park for 2 years, but now we're not, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And sort of separate and apart from that, given this pretty major zoning reform effort that we are undertaking, I see the timing of now as a trial as being particularly problematic, because we are essentially looking at changing lots of variables all at one time, and then trying to draw potentially a conclusion from that. So I, in summary, am not in favor on either of these points, and I will stop there and am eager to hear what others have to say.
Good. We're getting very close to having a straw poll, but I have a few hands up. I think we would do a straw poll first on accepting and then decide which of the other two. I have Councillor Baker followed by Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I'm going to be brief because I have to go back to another committee, but I do want to associate myself with the remarks of my colleague from Ward 7, and I think she stated it very well. I just want to point out the other issue that is particularly concerned to properties and areas of the city near other communities or the educational institutions is the long-term impact of this on those neighborhoods. And Brookline, for example, has an overnight parking ban, and there are areas of the city that are close to that would be affected adversely by this. And also there are colleges and universities where we've had problems. So I think I would oppose both the repeal, and I would also oppose the trial for the reasons that have been stated. And I thank you for your courtesy, and I will leave the committee, but thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Councillor Baker, and know that we channeled you earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Oliver followed by Councillor Lucas, please.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think there have been a lot of really salient points made to this point, so I'm not going to repeat them other than to simply say, I believe that Councilors Markowitz, Baker, Grossman have made some excellent points. I agree with them. I am not in favor of lifting this ban permanently or temporarily. And I'll be really like the way I look at this is, this is a complex issue, right? The solution sounds pretty simple. Sure, yeah, park on the street. Yeah, go ahead. It's not that simple, right? This isn't just about snow removal anymore. This policy has become part of the fabric around which the city council, in my short 3 years on the council, or almost 3 years now, we've been making decisions based on the fact that this policy exists and it's in place. I think kind of expanding a little bit on what I just heard from Councilor Baker, I think it's also fair to say it's pretty obvious, but it's worth noting. There are, if we think about all of the different myriad of problems that we've seen or heard coming in by email, some of them are very compelling. Like, you can't read some of these cases and go, that's, you know, that's not something we can solve for, because I believe some of these we can and should solve for. I don't believe that this particular approach is the right one. I believe that it's going to cause at least as many problems as it solves. Think about all of the streets across Newton that are adjacent to other communities where we're going to get people parking on our streets. They're going to be, and not that I mind if they park on our streets for a while. I believe people are going to park on our streets and leave their cars there, which is going to cause other problems. And it's going to not solve the problem of people who want to be able to park in front of their house so they can get to their house because they have a broken leg or because they have a condition that, you know, it would be appropriate for them to park in front of their house. So then the last thing I'm going to say, and to the people who, you know, Jeremy and Jim and the others who have put, I can't even imagine how much energy into getting us to this point in the conversation. I will work with you to figure out a better way to tease these issues apart, put them on a board, talk about solutions to each one. Let's get surgical with this, if I may kind of throw another analogy out there. Like, there are issues that we should be solving here. I just don't think this is the way to do it. I will not be supportive of the permanent repeal of the ban or the temporary repeal of a ban. I don't think this is a smart way to go about the solution. But thank you. Hopefully that was, because I promised I would be short.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Oliver. Compelling. Councillor Lucas, followed by Councillor Malachy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And also thank you to Mr. Freudberg, Mr. Cody, and other members of the repeal parking ban team. I know I saw Mr. Freudberg numerous occasions at Village Days. I saw him anywhere and everywhere with a clipboard, always trying to get signatures for this petition. A lot of hard work has gone into this. So, I mean, thank you for raising this, you know, important issue and bringing it forward to this council. I also want to echo the comments made by my colleagues who have spoken before me. I think they all hit the nail on the head. So I am going to be a little repetitive. Just, you know, the whole, we're doing the village center zoning right now. And I think Councilor Markowitz made an excellent point as to why we should not repeal the ban right now. There are other environmental concerns, putting more cars in the city. I don't see how this is going to, you know, is this a good environmental policy, basically, is what I'm getting at. I don't think it is. And over here on the north side of Newton, you know, we got some small, narrow streets in, you know, Nonantum, Newtonville, West Newton, Auburndale. I know probably also for Upper Falls and maybe some other neighborhoods in Newton. We have some very narrow streets with multifamily housing where, you know, getting a fire truck, you know, down one of these streets after the snowstorm. I'm talking about a day or two after the snowstorm where the snowbanks, you know, we all remember that those awful blizzards from about a decade ago or so.
2015.
2015, almost a decade ago. Thank you for the correction. Where, you know, if cars can now legally park on the street, both sides of a street, and then trying to get a fire truck through, that is dangerous. That is a public safety issue. And then, you know, also the, I think we had up to 6 people on the land use committee who are on this call right now. 5 of us on PS&T do serve on land use, I believe. I'm just thinking of some projects that we approved in Newtonville, the Oakley Spa, 120 Norwood Ave, just to name two, where, some of the neighbors, were complaining about the additional cars that were going to be parked at these new developments. And I told them, as long as we have the winter parking ban, folks will not be able to have two cars for one household. I intend to keep that promise. So I am a no on repealing the parking ban right now. But as what Councillor Oliver said, I think it's up to us to come up with a workable solution for all those people who have and are experiencing hardship when it comes to parking on the streets in the winter. I think that's our responsibility. I don't think this is on the table for tonight, but personally, I like a hardship waiver program to allow those who really need to park on the street during those 4 months to allow them. And, I guess we would have to work with the police and DPW, perhaps, if it's a sticker or some other mechanism that allows them to park on the street, just so that we don't open the floodgates, but also at the same time help out those who need the help the most. And I think that is our responsibility. So I'm a no on repealing the ban right now. As far as a pilot program, I don't think that's the right solution as of right now. So I would be a no on that as well. Thank you very much.
Great. Councillor Lucas, I'm just going back to my notes, and our question I asked of Captain Tuzat was on the capacity to check permits, and we would need new technology and license plate readers to be able to do any kind of permit system that exists for at night in the winter. So we'd have to find another way around that particular obstacle.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think that's our responsibility. If we do vote down, if the full council votes down the repealing the ban now and a trial, I think that's our responsibility to come up with another workaround. Let's find out what other cities and towns do, and let's see if we can implement them here. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I have Councillor Malachy followed by Councillor Kelly.
Okay, so I think Councillor Grossman very well described the sort of incongruity of, on the one hand, providing for much lower minimum parking requirements, and on the other hand, sort of liberalizing the on-street parking, and as well as the environmental question. And Councillor Lucas elaborated on that. I completely agree with that. I guess I would like to add respond to the equity argument that we're hearing, or the fact that it's somehow not fair. The way I see it, repealing the winter overnight parking ban would actually make Newton more expensive, because we would be eliminating the sort of low-cost way for people to get into Newton by renting an apartment or buying a house that has, what most of the world would consider inadequate parking. And we'd be actually making the problem worse. We'd also be burdening the, so-called lower, more moderate income parts of the city, which tend to be the denser parts of the city, which are the very areas that, I think the proponents here say they want to help. People seem to think if I could park in front of my house, life would be great, my problems would be solved. But, the issue is that you open it up to year-round parking, and everyone else can park in front of your house too. And there'll be streets, as we have now, where it's, sort of feels dangerous to park on the street. I'm thinking of Webster Street in West Newton. There are streets with, as I mentioned before, the one side only parking, or maybe no parking at all. And so the streets that remain that have parking would be getting perhaps deluged is an overstatement, but impacted by more cars coming from those other streets. And as has been said before, I just think it would solve more problems and we'd be getting more complaints than we are now. I think we have to treat people kind of as adults and say that not everyone can have everything for a low price, and you can make a choice to, live in Newton with a 1-car driveway or 1-car garage or whatever, or if you want to have 3 or 4 cars, maybe you have to live somewhere else. You can't have everything at the same time, and it may feel unfair, but basically everything about life is unfair to people who have less money. So I'm sorry to sound harsh, but that's kind of the way I see it. So I'm not in favor of either a temporary or permanent lifting of the ban. I do want to give Jeremy Freudberg credit. I love Jeremy. I think he's brilliant. I just agree with him on this, but I congratulate him for forcing the question. I think that's good. I am happy that if there is a vote, it will be in 2 years, when I think a lot more people will be more aware of the zoning stuff that's going on and how that would, how lower parking requirements in the zoning would interact with a repeal of the ban, and would be able to take that into consideration when they vote in 2 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Maliki. Councilor Kelly, followed by Mr. Freudberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a different perception on several issues or topics or realities that were raised tonight that I would like to express, if not clarify. I think I heard one of my esteemed colleagues, and I don't mean that sarcastically, I mean that very truly, say that in fact, people are not, it's being proven that people are not moving into some of these developments who want to be car light. I may have misheard that, but if that's what was said, I think our experience is to the contrary of that. If particularly we look at the newer developments of Austin Street and Trio, have shown where we required much more parking than is being needed. There is excess parking available, and the people who have moved into those units do want to be car light. So I think that part is working to prove the point that there are people willing to move into these locations and these type of housing situations who do not need Suburbans and Tahoes and 2 and 3 cars. Another thing I think I heard was a fear over people who live in our neighboring, call it abutting cities and towns, parking on our streets. Well, I've done a lot of research on this over the last 4 years, and many of our abutting towns also permit parking. So why would someone drive, for instance, from Waltham, which is the closest town that I live near over here on the north side of, why would people bother moving their cars to my street when they can park on their own? I think that is a red herring and not likely to be a big problem. On my side of the north side, someone from Newtonville was talking about his side of the north side. There are issues. Why I got involved in this 4 years ago was from hearing from a lot of my neighbors and constituents and voters that they have a problem not being able to park. They are in smaller, sometimes 2-family homes without adequate on-site parking. So there are parts of all of Newton, particularly on the north side, I'm not going to disagree with this, that make a blanket ban not a simple or successful thing. Some streets, as has been stated, are too narrow or one-sided parking or curvy, and that's why we haven't been able to come up with an easy solution yet. In the long run here, though, I'd like to say, though I'm not on your committee, can't be voting on this tonight, that I definitely support a trial. In fact, I think that will give us the evidence and the real life experience and the data that we're asking for and wanting in order to adapt a better solution at the end of the 2-year period. If this comes to the full council, I will definitely vote in favor of the 2-year trial. And just one other comment I'd like to make about the format. I know that it was anticipated there might be 1,000 attendees tonight, so it went to the webinar format. I'll just say that I don't like this format as a way of having a public hearing. I don't like that the attendees can't see who's on. I respectfully to the chair who was trying to manage the meeting and have it be a working committee meeting. I feel very uneasy having a public hearing where the public can't actually speak. And I know that they're invited to submit their comments in writing, but I did want to just say this on record. We've got now 61 attendees, and some people have their hands up over there, even though it was clearly said that they would not be allowed to speak tonight. But it feels antithetical to the purpose of a public hearing to not allow the public to speak. So that's my last comment for you this evening. Thank you for letting me speak and for letting me be here.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. I think it was clear this is not a public hearing, and that's why no public input was going to be taken. And it was the possibility of thousands of folks coming on that made not just me. I was willing to go with open Zoom, but it made our clerk's office nervous. The counselors would not be able to log in and be able to speak after being at other meetings. And that was in part because they realized there was an all call to come in and log in. I have at this point, Mr. Freudberg, followed by President Albright.
You can let President Albright go first.
Thank you. President Albright?
So again, I have to apologize if this has already been said, but the parking ban, the people who are most hurt by the parking ban are the ones who are least able to afford it. It tends to be folks in rental units. It tends to be folks on the north side of the city. It tends to be folks in smaller properties with no driveways. And I really think we need to keep that in mind when we're voting for this trial. And I don't know if you discussed that or not.
We haven't yet. We've sort of discussed it as part of the entire package. I've tried to keep it to the main question, but we've gotten the trial question come up as well. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, I know there are people who say I live in a short driveway with tandem, and it's difficult for me and my husband to move our cars to get them out. I'm not as worried about the tandem people who have to move their cars to make the right car get themselves out in the morning. I'm more concerned about the people who just simply don't have a place to park. They're single mothers. They're having to walk a distance. They drop their kids off at their house. They have to walk a distance after they park their car, and it's all winter long. And there are lots of people like that. And many of the emails that we received are about those kinds of issues. So I would hope that we would keep these people in mind when we think and we vote on this particular item. So I thank you for that.
The last several years.
Thank you, President Albright. I have Jeannie Fairley, followed by Mr. Freudberg.
Thank you very much, Chair Downs. I wasn't going to raise my hand. I didn't know if anyone had any questions. I think a lot of you know where I stand on this, and I'm following up on President Albright's comments. There are many, many people with disability placards, valid disability placards and plates here in the city. Quite a high percentage of our older adults have, because they have mobility issues especially, have placard, valid disability placard. And then there's younger people who also do, and I'm the go-to person, have been for 8.5 years now, almost 9, whatever, trying to make reasonable accommodations for these individuals because they have no other choice. They've never had a parking space, even where they live during the day. They have, and they actually can't walk the distance to a municipal parking lot. I remember one family in particular, and I still think about this young woman. She's she was 16, so now she's probably 18, but she has such severe asthma that the parents can't even wait for the ambulance to come and take her to the hospital to save her. They just get her in the car and go. And, I was able to get them a residential parking space, accessible parking space. They do have an accessible disability placard across the street, or on this street. I forget. I think they're on a very narrow street. But when the mother said to me, "What am I going to do during the winter? I have to, or even a snow, anything." She didn't know how she was going to do it. She was really afraid she wouldn't be able to save her child. That might sound like an extreme story, but guess what? It's not. I have many stories like that. Thanks to the police department, and I see that two of my colleagues are here, Captain Doucette and Sergeant Wade. So I do personally ask for reasonable accommodation for each individual person who needs this. Half of them don't know about me, which means I'll be flooded as soon as they listen to the YouTube or whatever. But then the patrol officer has to check the list. They do that a little bit, and that system's not perfect either. So I'm really, really concerned about, we have 25,000 older adults, I think, something like that. Not that they all own cars, but a lot of them do. And they do own a car because they can't get around walking anymore. Okay. So anyway, back to, I asked for this several years ago, and I know it was during COVID and everything, but if there's any way that, I know in Brookline, I did check, they don't ticket people who are parking on the street overnight that have a disability placard or plate being displayed. That is the minimum I'm begging you to think about. And of course, it only helps one population. I live in a two-family. I don't drive, but my son who lived with me had a car, and we could barely get off the road for a snow emergency, never mind the parking ban every night during the winter. So please think about those people. I don't think they can all be exceptions. This is, my idea is to repeal the ban, but if at the minimum to figure out a way and maybe at least recognize disability placards and plates for people parking out front of their house. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fairley. I think Mr. Freudberg, you're next, and Councillor Oliver. Then I'd like to take a vote on approving, a favorable to approve the initiative petition.
Yep. All right. Thanks. And again, I appreciate all the comments from all the councilors, both on and off the committee. Again, I've worked with many of you in other capacities, so I know that you're doing your best. So I guess what this all seems to come down to is there seem to be a lot of people on this committee who expect that, as soon as we repeal the ban, there'll be this proliferation of cars, and that's the only thing that stops people from having cars is the ban. And again, I think that could be true. We could find out through the trial pretty easily. But the other thing is, to Council Oliver's point, there's all these things that we have to kind of solve in advance, and whatever it is, we don't actually have to solve all those things in advance if there's no proliferation of cars. So I think it's kind of helpful to be a little bit more realistic about that. Again, part of it's opinion, part of it is more factual. So just to get into the facts, I mean, again, I collected most of these signatures, not most, but I collected a lot of these signatures myself. And again, a very common thing which I heard was, this doesn't affect me. I have, a driveway which is sufficient for my family, but I'll sign anyway. And again, not every house is going to turn over either to be, rebuilt in something else, or, have, 10 people all move into it who have, 10 cars. I think we can kind of always kind of see it coming. And again, people do have the cars that they need. And again, that kind of goes both ways. On one hand, we do have some instances where someone doesn't have a parking spot, and, they have to struggle all winter to find out where to park. But we also have plenty of cases, and again, this came up again in my field work, where a person has a huge driveway, or even just a regular sized driveway, and they don't need a car, because guess what? I mean, we've been all working very hard, including myself, to make Newton walkable, bikeable, et cetera. And it seems to actually be working again, plus with work from home. People will just make their own rational decision. Again, many councilors point out that the car is not cheap. I agree, it's not cheap. But if you need one, you need one. So again, again, really what it comes down to is this whole idea of what, is there really, floodgates that are about to be opened? I'd say probably not. I mean, that's my point. And again, just on the trial, I think it's helpful to be clear that the trial, at least in my conception of it, is not to see, does repealing the parking ban work? It's to identify where the problem areas are. And like I said, you can waste a lot of time. Again, there's lots of bigger issues in the city. Trying to, preempt every single issue. Or again, you can usually see things coming in with development. I know that there's mixed opinions on the council about development. There's also mixed opinions about development within our ballot question committee. And, the one thing that is true about development is you can still always see it coming. I mean, you have to have a building permit to build something. It's not just going to pop up all of a sudden overnight. So again, I mean, just one other point. Again, I'm not sure how much time I really allowed to have at this point, but again, I think, we want people to stay in Newton. I'm not sure if someone's circumstances change where, they were used to be able-bodied and they could walk everywhere and now they need a car. I'm not sure if that really merits kicking them out of Newton. I'm not sure that if people are, lived in Newton a long time and they continue to kind of, grow into multiple generations, at some point, we say, your household is too big. You got to leave Newton if you want to be able to drive to work. So again, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. But again, I just think that it helps to be realistic about what we're really talking about. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Freudberg. Councillor Oliver.
Great,
and then I
thank you.
really would like to bring it to a vote.
Yep,
and
I'll be out of
I
here.
will also tell you guys what I'm thinking.
Great, thank you. So in reverse order, Mr. Freudberg, I think what's interesting about the comments you just made, I believe that we are being incredibly realistic in terms of talking about some of the challenges that we think we're going to introduce here that aren't challenges today, but might become them tomorrow, and are likely in some cases to become them challenges, that is, tomorrow, should this take place. And then to Ms. Fairley, the instance you just brought up is perhaps the exact center of the topic that I was alluding to when I said, or talking about when I said, we need to solve for the real problems, but we need to tease them apart, and we need to fix the ones that we can and that we should be fixing. And the example you brought up is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. But thank you. Hopefully that was fast enough. Thank you, Chair Downs.
Absolutely, Councillor Oliver. So I'm going to take just a vote, if someone will make the motion to approve the initiative petition as written. Can I get a motion?
So you're asking for a motion to approve the item as it was initially presented?
I am asking for that so that we can take a vote on it, and then we can take up the other two possibilities.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Oliver moves. I'm going to do a roll call vote of the committee.
Could you speak?
Madam Chair, can we just be clear about the vote?
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor.
So the vote on this, and I believe Councillor Oliver is doing this as a courtesy, is to approve Mr. Freudberg's and the other 6,000 voters initiative petition to repeal the overnight parking ban now. And that is so for us to, I think we can do an up or down vote on that and then move on if we haven't approved it to the other two alternatives. So Ms. Delaney, can you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Sure. Councillor Downs?
No.
Councillor Oliver?
No.
Councillor Lucas?
No.
Councillor Malachy? Councillor Malachy, you're muted.
I think she's listening to another, the other
Okay,
meeting right now.
I'll come back to her in a minute. Counselor Markowitz,
No.
Counselor Bowman, I believe has left the meeting.
Right.
Okay. Counselor Grossman
No.
and Counselor Lipoff.
No.
Okay, Counselor Maliki,
I'm sorry, I was briefly in public in PS&T. What is the vote on?
okay, to approve the initiative petition to repeal the winter overnight parking ban as written.
Okay, I'm a no.
You're a no. Okay, so the vote is 7-0.
With one
And
absent.
Council Bowman not voting.
Great. Which is kind of where I thought we were. So colleagues, I'm listening to you. I'm also listening to the other counselors on this call, and I'm listening to the many people who signed the initiative petition. I'm going to align myself while I fully embrace many of the goals that you have brought up. I also am aware that it'll be harder to implement the bike and ped plan if we have no overnight parking ban, because those spaces become more precious as more people can use them. However, we will have a binding initiative before us in 2 years, because that's the vote we just took. Because I don't think it's that difficult for this group to raise an additional 1,000 or so signatures. That's basically 2,500 signatures, but I believe they're only 1,000 short. And that's a lot of voices. So I'm going to align myself with Councillor Kelly in that it's better to have data than not to have data. And I will be supporting a 2-year trial. We do have language that basically, if you wanted to look at the legal language, we could do that. I don't think it's going to pass this committee. So I will put it up if you would like it. Otherwise, I think we can move to our second option, which is to reject the commission, the petition, but not have a substitute motion. I believe the cleanest way to do that is to float the idea of a trial and have that voted down by the committee. What do you think? I'm seeing some nods. No? Okay. So I will put forward a suggestion that we have a substitute motion that would be to trial this for 2 years, knowing that in 2 years it will come to a public vote and the public will have an idea of what it looks like. And yes, it may be hard to put that toothpaste back in the tube, but on the other hand, we might see that we have some issues, we need to address them. And perhaps we need more time than the 2 years we've just been through for Traffic Council to get through each neighborhood and work out plans that will solve for whatever issues come up. Right now, when we talk about various issues that might happen, we're basically speculating. We would get 2 years of data if we passed a motion, a substitute motion. So I'm going to propose the trial, and I'm willing to take comments, or I'm willing to take a vote. What's the will of the commission? To the committee?
Vote.
Let's vote. All right.
No.
Ms. Delaney, would you take a roll call, please, on the 2-year trial substitute motion?
Yes. Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Oliver.
No.
No. Counselor Lucas.
No.
Counselor Maliki.
No.
Counselor Markowitz.
No.
Counselor Bowman is not present. Counselor Grossman.
No.
And Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Okay, that vote is 2 to 5. It fails.
Thank you very much. I think that concludes our business. thank you everyone for coming and attending. I hope you understand why we didn't want to open the entire issue up for further discussion. We really have read and will be reading many, many emails on this topic and have done before. So beforehand, I think we understand a lot of the issues that people are facing, and we just don't have a solution at this point. This will go to council in 2 weeks. I believe it's the 16th, Ms. Delaney.
Yes, it is.
So we have almost 2 weeks to take further input. And most of you know our address. And then it'll be settled for the time being. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Councilor Chair, can I just make a quick comment on the back end of this?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I want to say to the people who've attended this, and again, I didn't personally thank Mr. Freiberg, but obviously he and Jim Cody and everybody worked real hard on this, and it is an important issue. So I congratulate you for getting it to where you got it. I also want to say that, I think I speak for every counselor. We read every email we get. So up to the time this meeting started and even into the meeting, I was still checking my inbox, and I throw them. I think everybody does this. I create folders for issues. I got one called parking, and I throw everything in there. So I have it all, and I can actually count the votes. So I understand how people feel strongly about this. And I think there is, to Councilor Oliver's point, some work. I don't support the trial for the reasons I stated about, kind of putting the toothpaste back in the tube if it doesn't work. However, I do think there is work to be done here, particularly, for the people who have accessible needs and so forth. I think that's very serious. I think we do need to do something about that. And I think irrespective of what happens here, we can still work on those types of things. And I can almost bet every single one of the people in this room who are counselors agree with that concept and will take it forward. So regardless of how this plays itself out, that's not going to be ignored or fall by the wayside. So I just wanted to make that editorial comment. I'm all set, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.